But my relationship with God allows me to think with endless opportunity in mind because I'm like a spoiled kid. I believe that God will give me anything that I want, someone else is good for me.
Yeah.
And so it's when I say it's a centerpiece of me, I can relate it back to anything. I want to be a good father so that God is pleased with me. I want to do it for my community so God is pleased with me.
Yeah.
And if I want something, I know I can go to my father and get it. So it's really wrapped in everything that I do, but not in the sense of trying to, be um, in a space of judgmental or anything like that or anybody else. Because I don't walk linear paths myself. I don't walk straight lines. I've always been the guy who's going to color outside the box. But it really is the space of forgiving and compassion and everything else that kind of centers all around my relationship with God.
And honestly, you remind me of Solomon.
Yeah,
Being
yeah.
able to ask for wisdom, and I'm kind of curious, like, what do you find yourself praying for these days?
Um, these days, I'm always consistent in understanding that for me, I just trust God. And so I've gotten broader with my concepts of prayer in some cases of saying, I pray to God and ask that God continue to watch over us, protect us, love us, guide us, and lead us as an overarching. Because sometimes I don't know where we're going or what we need to do, but I'm trusting at the same time. I think fundamentally, what I'm also asking for is clarity when it comes down to self. I'm asking for patience. I'm asking for compassion. And I'm asking a lot with, continue to show me ways that I can be a better leader. And that is sometimes learning when to show up, when not to show up, how to show up. And sometimes it's a matter of, being intentional about being poured into by others, creating that time so that I can spend time with, whether it's family, whatever the case may be, but sometimes need some nurturing through engagement, let's say, in order for me to be a better leader. So it's a multitude of different things, but hopefully that kind of gives you a flavor for what's in my private prayers of God. So
I mean, being a great leader and being able to ask for compassion along with humility, like, that's a big thing.
absolutely.
So, kind of manhood. I like this quote when I think about like how you grew up and how you learned and unlearned things. It's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. And so, I really want to ask, like, who did you have to, like, who were you at like 15
Ooh.
versus who you are right now? And like, what did you have to like unlearn to be this person that I stand in front of?
Well, one thing my classmate right here from high school said that I was like 5'7" at the time. So, yeah, I got a late growth spurt. But I'll say this to you all. I'll share the story with you. I'll share a lot of stories about my life, my upbringing, and so forth. I try to be as transparent in the space of trying to motivate it. As we kind of focus on the Bible, right? There's things we can learn from each other. I don't share this story very often, but I will. When I was in high school, so I'm talking about 15, 16, 17, I was very focused on things that inner city Milwaukee kids were focused on at the time. Doing things that were probably not productive, you know what I mean? But I still had a productive side in some cases. I went to Custer High School. If y'all don't know Custer High School, I'll give you some quick line on it. We started off in my freshman class of 500 students. When we graduated, we had 89. So that's less than a 20% success rate. And I always tell people, fundamentally, I had a great time in high school. We made our own rules. Like, it was fun. But at the same time, it was a learning ground, but not things that probably other traditional high schools were learning. You were learning in the school of the hard knocks for sure. I'll give you the reason I'm gonna tell you this story because it was a turning point for me, I believe, as I reflect. I was working at this grocery store on the north side, and a situation happened, let's say, um, where it spilled over an interaction. I'm gonna say an interaction happened that later spilled over to after work, and it involved me, my uncle, my cousin, and then uh, yeah, exactly, and three other opposing individuals, let's say. Um, Nonetheless, however the story was told at the time, um, I ended up in a county jail cell facing 45 years for some extremely trumped up charges at the time, and I'm 17. But it was a moment, I think, at that time where, regardless of the circumstances of right or wrong, or, am I, these charges are crazy, it was still a moment of like, you got to deal with it, right? And I remember calling my father on a collect call from a prison cell. He like, well, you got some whimpering in your voice. You in jail now. You gotta toughen up. And then I remember thinking, if I get out of this situation right here, I'm probably gonna do it better with life, right? Yeah. I was like, it still was a probably, right? But nonetheless, we got out of that situation, and it probably was nothing more than just, a learning lesson. But it scared the out of me though, right? So that's the guy I was at that time. I think even at that age though, we talk about the hustle. I was always hustling. When I was 7 years old, me and my cousin, so it's a common thing with me and my cousins, huh? But we we used to we used to like write our names on pieces of paper, put it in everybody's mailboxes, and then have them with our phone number, tell them to call us when the snow showed after school. And so 7, 8 years old, I was buying my own Jordans and everything else, and just always kept some kind of hustle going on. And I think that as I matured, that hustle stuck with me, and to the point where when I got to college, I was a different hustler probably than the other students. When I got to the professional world, I probably was a different type of hustler then. I used to wake up at 5:30 a.m. in Milwaukee, drive to Madison, about get on the road by 6, drive to Madison, get there by 7:30 for work, because I was working in public finance on undergrad, leaving there at 4:30, driving to Whitewater, because I was working on my MBA, getting to class at 5:30, getting to Whitewater at 5:30, eating, hanging out, start class at 16 and leave at 9:40 and go back to Milwaukee, because I had just bought this duplex at 24 years old back in Milwaukee. So, it's a space of just that's something I grabbed from my childhood that's carried over and been part of my, as we say, revival.
And I'm gonna stay here and gonna talk about your dad because I'm a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
I definitely need to know like how you transition his words to your own behaviors and practice. But you got into like the work ethic and kind of hustling. What made you bold enough to tell people like I want to be a millionaire in 10 years versus and really like feel confident in that when other people are laughing?
So this is a story she gathered from. I was a commencement speaker at the University of Wisconsin Whitewater a couple of years ago, and I was telling the story. As I'm going to tell you all. I was 21 probably at the time. I had this on-campus job. We were essentially, it was an entertainment job. So we were bringing the speakers, the comedians, the different folks on campus, hosting on behalf of the campus, and so forth. But nonetheless, our group had a retreat, and so we were breaking off the smaller groups. And in the smaller groups, we were tasked with different questions. One of the questions was, "What's your stretch goals in 10 years?" I I said, hey, I'm an entrepreneurial type of guy. I'm a business major in finance and so forth. And I want one of my stretch goals to be a millionaire in 10 years. They laughed me out the room, right? And I'm like, what's so funny type of thing, right? And the punchline really is, I mean, they were absolutely right. I did not become a millionaire in 10 years. I did it in 7. So, so and that's just really, and at that time in that convention speakers, I carried over with you all, even in my journey in this revival, um, I had learned through my fraternity a poem called If, one of the first stanza is, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing ears and blaming on you, and then it goes into, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. So I was given a gift by learning that poem because it helped me to deal with that environment where I was fully convinced. And I didn't get upset or bothered or angry that they didn't believe. I just made allowance for their doubting and just kind of said, okay, I get it. I'm not going to convince you. I'm not trying to convince you or anything like that, but it's those kind of things that have come along with my journey that, can you hear me okay? Those kind of things that have come along in my journey that have, again, been extremely important for me.
Oh, thank you for that. So I told you I'm a daddy's girl,
Yep.
and you had conversations with your father,
Yeah.
and I want you to talk through. Talk through your father's wisdom and how that helped you with your self-awareness. Because, like, you went from an impulsive person to a
Very.
very controlled person.
Very.
And so, what was the turning point for that?
I speak a lot with my father. My mother is by far the most influential person in my life. Um, yeah. My father, he unfortunately passed away in 2010, right before I started this business, ironically enough. He was our leader, though.
Okay.
And my mother and my father were not together most of my childhood. But he was a leader in the concept of dropping words of wisdom and guidance for especially a young boy. And so while my mom was dealing with the challenges of raising a little boy through childhood, and her tactic was, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you till you figure it out.
I don't think that worked.
It worked for me, but nonetheless, her leadership was very nurturing and caring. I joke about the fact that she didn't spare the rod. I didn't deserve it at all. I needed it. I did. I don't want my kids though, but they don't need it. I needed it. But my father, he gave me something that I carry with me today, and I try to make as I'm conscious of. And he used to always say, I would go to school, get into a fight or get into a situation and get suspended and deal with these consequences. I would always be so mad, right? But I would always be mad after the fact. Like I would never think before. It would always be, I'm so mad right now, right? And he used to tell me, son, you have to learn to not let your emotions outrun your better judgment. Because you are now dealing with your better judgment when your emotions have already won the race. So it's those kind of things I think about in business. My colleague, my senior executive assistant who runs our office of the CEO, she will tell you I got to deal with controversy every day, from staff to politics to whatever the case may be. And I know that I'm not perfect in managing that emotion, but I do know that I'm best when I manage that emotion.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I mean, you're wearing blue, so we won't talk about that, but you're supposed to be wearing black and gold. You're a very proud alpha man.
Yeah.
And I really like this quote first of all, servants of all, we shall transcend all. And I'm kind of curious, like, how does that connect with you and how you see community?
It's again, my process has been a continuum. My life has been a continuum. I've picked up so many um, jewels along the way that have assisted me in life. And when we say in a fraternity, first of all, service of all, we shall transcend all. What that is now equated to in my team is, in terms of our mission and what we do, it's we want to do good while doing well, right? So I am a businessman, I am a capitalist by nature, but we don't do anything in our business that doesn't align with doing good.
I love that.
And so it's one of those things where, I can piece that from how I was mentored and loved on and bred inside of the fraternity to say, how do you want to show up every day as a professional? How do you want to show up as a business owner? How do you want to show up in your community? You can go do 1,000 more entertainment districts in whatever city, but how many more Thrive-Ons can you build instead? So that's part of what has shaped some of our business objectives and mission.
Yeah. No, thank you. So I'm a person for like sound bites. And you said when you don't have gumption and vision, oh, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And you really broke out for yourself. And when you think about your vision of Milwaukee, education, safety, and economics.
Yep.
Talk to me more about gumption and that tie to the first of all, serve all, transcend all, because it really is informed in your practice. Because I think it's easy for you to make money, but to do it in an ethical way where you're really reviving
Yeah.
a community means something.
Yeah, I think that when I look at when I started my business, right, I was 25. So we're celebrating our 15-year anniversary in September for the organization. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is really valuable for me to reflect, for one, but also remind myself of the risk tolerance I had at 25 that I don't got now.
Okay.
I will admit that I don't have the same risk tolerance. I didn't have a plan B. I told my mom, like, listen, Mom, I got a duplex. I don't have any rent because my duplex covers the mortgage. I don't have a car note. My car insurance is $100. I can probably live off a food budget of $100 a week. I got health insurance under you for another year, I think. But all my bills essentially were $1,000, right, a month, right? I got more than enough in my bank account from having worked to cover myself for a couple years. So I definitely will have a fallback plan to go get another job if this Royal Capital thing doesn't work. Right? I had really no intention of ever, I didn't have a conversation with myself about a plan B. It was just for her. But that was a risk tolerance I had then.
Okay.
I think so differently now, but it goes back to the gumption and what's required though. In order for, I'm reminded that I need to have this company take risks. If we didn't take risks, Royal Capital wouldn't exist. And so when I translate that into what this community needs from a leadership standpoint, and I challenge the mayor, I'm going to have dinner with Crowley probably next week. These are friends, right?
Yeah.
But I challenge them and I challenge myself, I challenge every leader. We need to have gumption. We got to have the risk tolerance to say, we're going to try. We're going to believe. We can do this. We can have a safer community. We can have a better community with more compassion. We can have more economic development. We can. You know how many times we heard no on this development? You're talking about $150 million on Kings Drive in the middle of a pandemic? When the markets are crazy, supply chain is crazy. This is an old building with all kinds of fundamental challenges for real estate. You know how many times we heard no? Right? But it was all about the gumption of saying, you know what, I think I think we can. So it's so important for us to harness that gumption and remind ourselves of who we were when we were 25.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you right now, make sure you do it twice.
Yep,
Okay?
yep.
So, Community Bear did shine on, you did thrive on. Talk to me about the concept and like how it came to be.
Yeah, so Thrive On has already exceeded my and my team of collaborators' wildest dreams. It started from a mere conversation at the Medical College of Wisconsin where Dr. Raymond was saying, you know, we have these centers and institutes that are focusing on the social determinants of health. But they're on the West Campus in Wauwatosa. They probably need to be a little bit closer towards the action of the neighborhoods. We don't know how we get it done, but that's what I would like to do. They end up then recruiting a Royal Capital to be a visionary partner to help them create the vision and an actionable plan. At the same time, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation was embarking on a aggressive push around racial equity and impact investments and so forth, and place-based investments. They were investing all the way down Key Drive from a different standpoint than they originally were. They still do with grants. It's a complementary type of investment program. So we collectively came together and said, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. My job was, okay, we know how to finance and raise capital. We know how to do construction. We know how to identify what site, what this, blah, 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 blah. And we know how to storytell enough to make an internal and external engagement strategy work, right? We know how to do that. Medical college knows medical, and the foundation knows how to do all the things they do great. Came together, and this is why I say, and I adopted, that collaboration is the new innovation. There is nothing that I could have done by myself. There's nothing that medical college could have done by themselves, Greater Milwaukee Foundation. We did this together, which allowed for this thing to exist. And I will tell you that we are all so impressed. Thrive On doesn't work, or it doesn't live up to its vision without opportunities to engage like this. If you walk into this space and it's not activated with CreativeMornings or another organization, then we missed the mark. But in our community, what we know we need more convenience, which is why I love the app that the brother was presenting. We need this. We thrive for it. And I will, if you want, I'll give you some more details about the real estate and all that kind of. I'll give you 30 seconds of it. Obviously, all this convenience space, small conference room, large conference room, open for the community. You got Kinship. What makes Kinship unique is that they work on training and development for folks who are unemployed or underemployed, right? And are equipping them with training and development opportunities to make them successful in life. Then you go down the hall, you got JobWorks. JobWorks does a complimentary service in that same capacity, but they also create network with Marquette, UW-Milwaukee, and other programs and services so that when you bring a person in that is either re-entering the community or is unskilled or whatever the case may be, they can work within that program to then transition to a job working at Marquette, MCW, whatever the case may be, the entry-level work. When you go behind this wall right here, you'll see Versity Blood Center. Versity Blood Center is an organization working aggressively on blood disorders and the need for more blood donation and so forth. And they have a significant emphasis on the disparity in minority communities, particularly black folks, as it relates to sickle cell. Yeah. On the other side of that wall, you got 90 units of affordable housing, 55, some dedicated to 55 and wiser, some dedicated for families. And there's a cohort of medical students that are focused on the social terms of health. They have a living space there as well. You go across the street, we got Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy. There was a school that had been performing since 2000 and something, continuously pushing kids through graduating high school and getting college acceptance letters. but they were living and operating out of a Goodwill warehouse on the northwest side of Milwaukee with no windows.
Yep.
We saw the problem, we built them a brand new high school, right? So all of that, all of that is the gumption. All of that is what's required. All of that is collaboration. So in the medical college, GMF, and all those, they're on the upper tiers of its floors here. So the medical college has floors 2 and 3, focus on the social terms of health, different centers and institutes, national and national reach. And then you got the Great Milwaukee Foundation, who does grant making, policy informing, impact investments, and everything that you can imagine that helps to be a bloodline for this overall community. Longer than 30 seconds, I know, but.
But it works. I really love that. Yes, because you don't think.
Oh, one more. Early childhood education is one of the primary challenges in our community right now. That birth to 3 is such a significant challenge. That's the most developmental stage of a child, and that equates to being an adult. We got Milwaukee Early Childhood Education Center as an expansion of their current campus, and they are thriving. They have 90 seats, I believe. And in this community, we are at a negative in terms of available seats to address this early childhood education component and challenge in our community.
No. So it's more than a beautiful space. It's a space of purpose, and I like that.
Yeah.
All right. This is my closing. I think we can overcomplicate life, but I laughed a couple times when you told me like it's important to keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So why does that really matter to you? And think about like redeeming your time, being able to give your staff the autonomy that they need. And then when we think about our purpose in life, we can do a lot of things and make priorities something that isn't something it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be priority. And so how do you apply keeping the main thing for you?
When I was 22, I was working in public finance. I had 2 people say the same thing to me. One, and I was 20, I had heard when I was 20. My mentor at the time, still a friend of mine, is a guy named Caleb Haywood, real estate professional. I had told him, I love this real estate stuff, but I also want to do the skating rink. He was like, okay, go do real estate first, then you got enough money for the skating rink, right? Then when I was 22, I still didn't learn, and I was working in public finance on real estate development, and I told one of the leaders, I love working in public finance, but I also want to go do this shoe store. He said, well, go do public finance first, and then you go buy the shoe store. It was one of those things where I kind of learned early on as a thinker, like, okay, what did all this mean? Later on, okay, I got to learn to keep the main thing, right? If I want to donate $1 million to Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy, it got to come from somewhere. What I've learned as a professional, as a leader, though, is this book called The One, and it's an essential book in terms of prioritization, and I read a lot, so I can give you a ton of books to read. But the fundamentals of being effective. And one thing from that book that it says is, when you wake up, and Kanisha will tell you that my to-do list is very long at times, but I have to create a list of things to do, and then things not to do, and then things that can wait, right? So all things gotta be done. I gotta figure out if I'm gonna wait on it, but it's gonna get done, I'm not gonna do it, or to do it. The to-do list needs to be very minimal. 1 to 2 to 3 very, very big ticket items that need to get done that day. Everything else is great. The second list of things not to do, which is different than wait, is a list of things that others can do for you, with you, or collaborative, whatever the case may be. So I'll come up with my list of saying, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And I may say, Kanisha, can you have my staff, our teammates do A, B, and D, and F over here? Because, I need to delegate that over there. And so there goes my buddy right there, Greg Wesley, trying to slip through, president of the Great Milwaukee Foundation. How goes it, Greg? But fundamentally, that is a tactical assignment that I give myself in terms of kind of managing my day-to-day and all the obligations that I have.
Oh, thank you. Now, I've been asking a lot of questions. I'm going to turn it over to people in the audience to ask 1 or 2 questions. Okay, go ahead.
Like growing up here in
You know what?
So just for the audience and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
recording, I got you. So how did you turn hoop dreams into something that was finance, coming from Milwaukee?
I think that it was much more me having a business person objective because I didn't know what finance was. And in finance in our world is just the money, right? It's not a traditional accounting. And so I am not a finance person, although I got finance degrees. I'm just an entrepreneur that knows how the money works, right? And so for me, I was inspired by business leaders who, like I did this fireside chat where I was a moderator for this guy named Dame Dash. He was a pioneer in early hip hop, but he didn't rap not one time. He was the well-known front man, but he was a businessman behind the scenes. So he was the guy that owned the record label, and he was the guy that recruited the artists, and he funded the artists and all those good things. He was the guy that created that said, hey, we can be rap artists, but we also can go out here and do streetwear because we're connected to the streets, so we're going to have Rockaware. Our company is called um, uh, Rock Boys, Rockefeller, Rockefeller, and then they said they got Rockaware clothes, streetwear, and they made them make sense, and they made a lot of money. They ended up selling that company for north of like $300 million. The street brand company. So I was always intrigued by the business aspect, and my father was an extreme entrepreneur. I'll be transparent in saying that he was a street entrepreneur, um, and but he later turned into a legit entrepreneur. Um, and so I didn't know the other side of the street stuff. I'm happy I didn't. 'Cause I'm happy I wasn't inspired by that, but I was just inspired by him running teams and connecting the dots and problem solving and making money and driving what he wanted to drive and doing for our family and going to we do the Sunday drive where we drive, and this was back in Mississippi. Um, but he was driving around on Sundays. He had a pocket full of 20s. He can go to my auntie house, give her a 20, go to my cousin's house, give him a 20, and just be able to give to others was so important for me to see at that age. So that was some of the fundamentals that kind of led me to being who I am now as a person, who I am now as as an entrepreneur, and then who I am now also as a giver. So I really enjoy the opportunity. A lot of it's anonymous at times, but so long as the impact is there, we good.
No, thank you. And we got one more question, okay?
Hey, so you talked about growing up in Milwaukee and the lessons that you learned throughout high school, right?
Yep.
So learning those lessons the hard way, how do you transition those lessons and that grit that experience gave you? How do you transition that to your children or just the youth in Milwaukee in general?
I always, the question was, how do you take the lessons learned to be of impact for the next generation, my kids and others? And so it's something else I learned along my revival. And it's a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others,
I love that.
right? And so I try to tell my daughters are 5 and 8. They still do whatever I tell them to do, right? And they are really good kids. My daughter just we need to celebrate this kind of stuff. My oldest daughter, who's tested, just placed 99 percentile in the nation. So they are like extremely active, fun kids. They're like, I'm writing notes now that they'll probably understand later, right? But we started talking about our youth that are approaching teenhood and teenagers and so forth. I always try to tell them it's cause, it's a correlation into what will happen in your life. If you do, and I got nephews that are like at that age, and I got brothers and so forth. You do this, this is what's going to happen, and here's a case study. So if you do this and you do this, here's the case study what's going to happen. Don't overcomplicate life. That's my message to youth and folks looking to make some advances in their life. Don't overcomplicate it. It's that simple. Be a wise man and woman.
And I think you also tap on people's shoulders to be accountable for the spaces that we're in, because we lead how we live. So I'm going to put that PSA out there that if you want to tap into the young people, you have to go to them. They're not going to come to you. So make the intention the support. Okay? Well, that's our TED Talk.
Thank you, Aaliyah.